Quito, Ecuador. My name is Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the evening news brief on Telesur English. And we begin this new edition right now. As many people had warned, President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel has already brought mayhem to much of the Middle East. More than 30 Palestinians have been wounded by Israeli troops in the occupied West Bank and Gaza, as the leader of Hamas called on his people to ignite another intifada. At least one protester was hit by live fire and is in critical condition. Others were injured by rubber bullets and tear gas, as Israel has deployed hundreds of extra troops in the West Bank. Israeli fighter jets are also reported to have carried out airstrikes in the Gaza Strip, allegedly in response to Palestinian rocket fire. A correspondent in Gaza, Noor Harasin, has more on the 3 days of rage taking place in Palestine.
Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas on Wednesday lambasted a U.S. decision which recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. In a televised address, Abbas said that President Donald Trump's decision on Jerusalem has ended the U.S. role as a peace mediator between Palestinians and the Israelis. Abbas also called the PLO Central Committee for an emergency meeting to create a unified position.
This decision has actually ended the stage because Trump publicly declared partnership with Israel in a way which made the two sides equal enemies to the Palestinian people. However, it has made things clear now. There is no way to bet on the U.S. role, negotiations, and the international law anymore.
After the announcement, Palestinian factions called for general strike and protests. On Thursday, Christmas lights and those illuminating the Al-Aqsa Mosque in East Jerusalem were switched off. Thousands of Palestinians in Gaza Strip and the West Bank took to the streets, burning tires, U.S. and Israeli flags, and chanting anti-U.S. slogans.
The Palestinian people who ignited the first popular uprising across the occupied Palestinian territories 30 years ago, and another one afterwards, is capable of igniting a third intifada in order to return the conflict to square one again, which is resisting the occupation on the ground by all means.
Leaders and diplomats across the Middle East have warned of serious repercussions of Trump's decision. The move could seriously implode in extremist groups and threaten stability and peace in the region, whose leaders are mired in their own troubles and their populations tired of wars. Noor Harasin, Telesur TV, Palestine.
A senior Palestinian official in President Mahmoud Abbas' ruling Fatah party has said that the U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, due to visit the region later this month, is unwelcome in Palestine. Statements from multiple leaders have condemned the embassy move, and have protests erupted around the world. In Jordan, protesters have been on the streets since Trump's announcement and into the night, as people burn U.S. and Israeli flags.
We consider that it's the right of the Tunisian people to demand the closure of the American embassy, because we consider this decision by the American president, that we see as a neo-fascist, to be a dangerous decision. It is a provocation.
And in Turkey, thousands have protested across the country, including outside the U.S. Embassy in the capital Ankara, where crowds gather chanting "Jerusalem belongs to Muslims." In Lebanon, the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, has called for an Arab boycott of U.S. relations and for a new uprising against Israel in the wake of the announcement.
The biggest and most important possible response is a new Palestinian intifada, an Islamic summit that decides that Jerusalem is an eternal and non-negotiable capital of Palestine, and the unity behind the choice of resistance and providing full support for this choice. This is what the American and Israeli should see.
And the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, drew attention to widespread protests and statements of world leaders and U.S. allies who have all condemned the move.
We are in contact with the whole world, and fortunately, we found critical reactions from all other countries in the world, including Europe, Asia, Pope, Africa. We even heard opinions which do not agree with the U.S. conduct coming from countries that are close to the U.S. The international public opinion is very important. Definitely the actions that take place all over the world, including the Arab world, Palestine and Jordan, are very important. These are all messages to Trump that what he did is a crime that cannot be accepted at all.
Our correspondent in Washington, Jorge Gestoso, told us more about how Trump's decision was taken.
Former CIA's director, talking about John Brennan, who has said, and I quote, Trump's action was reckless and would damage U.S. interests in the Middle East for years to come and will make the region more volatile. And another thing that had happened is that we've known that one of his largest donors, we're talking about Sheldon Adelson, who put $35 million in Trump's campaign, was one of the persons who really pressured Trump to take that decision. Also, Vice President Mike Pence, who is an evangelist, and he was under pressure of the evangelist community, that is a right-wing community very much pro-Israeli, and also the lobby of pro-Israeli hardliners. Mostly those are the people who push him to take that decision, and but very, very, if you want, questionable. The opposition of the Democratic Party has been silenced here in Washington, and there are a lot of question marks what's going on, if they agree or not agree, but definitely the silence is very much suspicious.
We now go to Argentina, where a court has absolved the jailed indigenous leader Milagros Salas, saying that the evidence against her did not stand up. The lawmaker and social activist was arrested and faced criminal charges for alleged threats against law enforcement officers in Jujuy province. Sala leads the Tupac Amaru organization, which organized several protests against the government of Mauricio Macri. After she was transferred to prison, she was dubbed President Macri's first political prisoner. International leaders and human rights organizations have all demanded her release. A federal judge in Argentina has requested the preventive arrest of former President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner for allegedly covering up Iran's possible role in a 1994 bombing at a Buenos Aires Jewish center. The former president was recently elected as a senator, and in order to be detained, Congress will have to vote to take her parliamentary immunity away. Fernández de Kirchner has blamed the government for carrying out a political persecution against the opposition. On the same day in Argentina, human rights organizations have been marching to recall the victims of the military dictatorship. Our correspondent Edgardo Esteban has more.
This is a sad day for democracy and a very particular episode for Argentina. Today, human rights organizations are holding a historical march to commemorate the victims of the military dictatorship and to defend memory, truth, and justice. Today as well, Judge Claudio Bonadio ordered the detention of former President Cristina Fernández, accusing her of treason regarding the terrorist attack against an Israeli organization building called AMIA that took place in 1994. It was the worst terrorist attack in the country's history. Temporary custody was also ordered for several officials of her government, like Carlos Zanini, who also ran as vice president for the 2015 elections, Luis Delia, a social defender and Fernández supporter, and Hector Timerman, former Foreign Relations Minister. This afternoon, the former President Cristina Fernández made an announcement regarding the situation. Here is what she said.
Edgardo Esteban from Argentina. And we come back with another story happening also in Honduras.
Also look to provoke personal and political harm to the opposition. Their paths, their ideas, this has nothing to do with justice or democracy. There's no case. There's no crime, there's no motive. It was judged and there's no case. Judge Claudio Bonadio knows it. The government knows it. The president of the nation, President Mauricio Macri, also knows it.
Now in Honduras, the opposition alliance has demanded an international audited recount of all the ballots from the elections that happened nearly 2 weeks ago. Opposition candidate Salvador Nasralla called a rerun of the election in a full ballot recount couldn't be completed.
We demand the recount of every single ballot with the participation of international mediators, accompanied with members of the Liberal and National parties. That's our request. That's the right thing to do. I make a call to the whole world to help us. We represent 6 million poor people. We are not here for a personal ego. Honduras doesn't have legal security. When we govern this country, there will be legal security and investment. It is time to take the dictator out. Those people are not legitimate. Not after the fraud we are facing. They want to steal the elections. They have been stealing for a long time.
Our correspondent Heather Gies joins us now live from Tegucigalpa. Heather, you've been at the news conference held by Nasralla. Can you tell us what happened?
So, Carla, there's been a lot of misinformation and confusion around this entire elections results process and what the different parties are calling for. So this press conference by the Opposition Alliance was really to clarify its position. So the Opposition Alliance is calling for a few very key things. One is a complete recount, meaning opening the ballot boxes and counting the votes again. And they're very firm that this should not be overseen by the current Supreme Electoral Tribunal, which it says has lost all credibility. Instead, they say that this recount should take place under international observers and international commission, and that the 3 main parties should be involved in this process. It has also called for a forensic audit of the election system because there have been so many irregularities. They're paying a lot of money for this elections service, and we're hearing that there were technical problems and the system went down. So they're calling for an audit into that situation. They have also in this press conference, they reiterated the fact that they see President Juan Orlando Hernandez's candidacy as illegal and unconstitutional because it was given the green light through a very controversial Supreme Court ruling, a ruling from a court that was essentially stacked by Hernandez's government. They also called for the state of siege, the military curfew that's currently in place, to be overturned. And they've also called for ongoing mobilization, saying that the people in the streets are really going to be the ones that decide where things go from here. Because obviously with the credibility of the tribunal lost, they're not counting on the tribunal to be where the decisions come from. After the press conference, I had a chance to speak to former President Manuel Zelaya, who was ousted in 2009 in the U.S.-backed coup, and he stressed that what they're looking for now is a dialogue between the 3 main parties to figure out how to create this kind of international commission to move forward. Now, this Opposition Alliance press conference was also done in conjunction with a group called the Convergence Against Continuing Rule, and what the Convergence has called for is actually for this entire election to be annulled, to be canceled, and for new elections to be called. The Opposition Alliance has not ruled out this option, but it has said that a new election would be a last resort, and what they're focusing on is this recount.
Thank you very much, Heather. That was Heather Gies from Tegucigalpa. We'll be coming back with more news in a minute. Stay with us. As Venezuela's election for mayors approaches on Sunday, the final preparations for the big day are being put in place. Candidates in 335 municipalities are closing the campaigns, and international guests are arriving at the country to get ready to oversee the electoral process. Our correspondent in Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, has been out and has checked the end of the campaign.
On December 10th, Venezuelans across the country will be voting for their new local mayors. 30,800 polling stations have been set up across the country. More than 18 million citizens are eligible to vote in what will be the 23rd election in 18 years of the Bolivarian Revolution. However, not everyone is playing ball. Candidates from 3 major opposition parties will not be participating. After their major loss in October's regional elections, they called a boycott. This has been condemned by some of their own supporters and by other members of an ever more fractured opposition.
There are no excuses for the people not to vote. The municipality is the most important cell of any electoral process.
Enrique Mendoza, a member of the opposition coalition's oldest parties, COPE, is one of those who has criticised the boycott. He's encouraging supporters to come out and vote. He fears that voter abstention will cause further damage to the opposition.
They should go to vote because we have to encourage the democratic process with the votes. If we don't go to vote, this will be so bad. This is why we call to all the nation to vote, to legitimize democracy.
It's not just the people who want to see a democratic process take shape. At the CNE, international guests have arrived from all over Europe and Latin America. They will be deployed to accompany and validate the election, visiting polling centres across the country.
I think it's very important because I think that there have been a lot of allegations of domination and fraud, so it's very interesting for us internationally to see the way in which the election operates. Of course, obviously with different forces working within any electoral process, people who don't win elections tend to question the results. Sure. So it's very interesting for me and very important to make sure that everything is above board, to talk to the people coming out of the polling booth and ask them how they experienced it, as well as to hear the official people here talking about it. They seem to be very careful.
So with only days to go, Venezuelans are all set and ready to decide who they want as their new local mayors. Participation will be key, as municipal strongholds will be crucial for presidential campaigns at the end of next year. Freddie Gillingham, Telesur, Caracas.
Now moving to Brazil, where the state oil company Petrobras has received $200 million in funds recovered from the country's largest ever corruption investigation. Petrobras is at the center of the car wash investigations, which revolves around kickback payments for Petrobras contracts. This investigation has rocked Brazil's political and business establishment, resulting in hundreds of arrests, including some of the biggest businessmen of Brazil. Cuban President Raúl Castro has arrived in Antigua and Barbuda ahead of the 4th CARICOM Cuba Summit set to begin on Friday. Castro was received by his counterpart, Prime Minister Gaston Brown, at VC Bird International Airport, and then escorted to the Carlyle Bay Resort, where Friday's international meeting will be held. The CARICOM Cuba Summit will discuss a number of topics of both regional and global importance, particularly climate change and disaster risk management. The group will also explore other options for business and development to promote relations and integration between the member states.
And then he will move on.
The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago has said that the most important achievement of his 2 years in office was signing an agreement with Venezuela on the joint exploitation of gas. The agreement signed in March this year includes building a pipeline from the giant Dragon gas field in the east of Venezuela. It will allow Trinidad and Tobago to supply its own market and to process and re-export up to 300 million cubic feet of gas by 2020.
So far, my biggest success, I would say, has been the quieting of the successes we've had in the energy sector, ensuring that we got a gas price agreement to re-energize the operations of the investors in the energy sector. Also, getting the Venezuelans to agree to give Trinidad and Tobago access to Venezuelan gas fields. This gives us a future which we couldn't contemplate even 2 years ago. This is a major development that allows us to remain in the gas business for decades once we manage to get it completed.
Staying in Trinidad and Tobago, sexual harassment and victimization debates have started in response to the local and international discussion on the issue of sexual harassment at the workplace. The Institute for Gender and Development Studies hosted a discussion called Boardroom Bullying on Tuesday. The speakers insisted that although the country has laws to deal with sexual harassment in the workplace, if it is not supported by the organizations themselves, attempts to safeguard the victims will be in vain. Local attorney Lynette Sibaran-Sood says the country should take a closer look at the legislation.
One of the things we have to do is look at legislation, and the other thing that we have to do is to let the scales drop from our eyes and understand exactly what it is we are dealing with. If we understand what we are dealing with, we can then know exactly what are the mechanisms to be put in place.
The judicial and political debate continues in Colombia after the disapproval of the special peace jurisdictions. Victims, social and indigenous organizations, and even the government have been presenting options for this space in Congress to become a reality.
The leaders of the indigenous communities deeply regret the failure of the Colombian Congress to approve the 16 seats reserved for the victims of the conflict, as stated in the Havana Peace Agreement. They believe that the failure of the political framework, which outlines their inclusion in the process, is just another attack on those who have suffered most in the armed conflict.
We're deeply sorry that those 16 seats given to the victims are still under judicial discussion. They deserve them because they've suffered the horrors of the war. So we're asking all organizations, victims, and people to take this very seriously.
The debate and mobilization around this open rejection continues, which some groups describe as vindictive. And as evidence, the traditional politicians fear losing the power and privileges that they currently enjoy.
It's not that they are victims of the paramilitaries or the guerrillas. They're victims of the country, of the Congress. And people have to know that these people back here, not all of them, but a significant majority, have spat in the face of the victims.
For the victims, the government never really included them as a part of this process as it had promised, nor is the Colombian Congress the parliament of peace.
It's disrespectful that they've rejected these reserved seats, which were part of the agreements. The senators had the audacity of leaving us out, the people, the ones who have suffered the conflict firsthand, denying us the possibility to be at the center of the agreement.
The implementation of the Havana Agreements will develop amid the upcoming electoral debate of 2018. It is this scenario that will see right groups use the opportunity to stand up for what was actually signed in the final agreement in the Colón Theater in Bogotá.
Peru's former presidential candidate, Keiko Fujimori, has been linked to the Odebrecht case. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, sent this report.
The police and the public ministry have seized 2 properties associated to the Fuerza Popular movement led by Keiko Fujimori after a warrant was issued by the court in charge of the Odebrecht case. It's important to remember that a former representative of the Brazilian company said that they financed Keiko Fujimori's presidential campaign, and that the head of the construction firm in Peru, Jorge Barata, had to explain these allegations. The court hasn't said anything yet about his testimony, but members of the Fuerza Popular movement believe this is a political intervention and that in spite of this, they have collaborated with the prosecution, providing them with a laptop and several documents that were archived in the seized properties located at Cercado de Lima and Surco district in the capital. We'll keep you updated with the latest.
That was Jaime Herrera from Peru. 50,000 people have protested in favor of Catalan independence in Brussels, where deposed leader Carles Puigdemont is currently living. Thousands of people traveled to the Belgian capital by caravan and car, causing major traffic disruption throughout the city. demonstrators say they want to open a dialogue around finding solutions to what they see as not only a Spanish problem, but an issue for all of Europe. Hundreds of people have marched on Capitol Hill in Washington to defend the rights of immigrant families and stand against the cancellation of temporary protective status. The TPS status protects more than 300,000 people from 9 countries living in the United States. In January 2019, Trump intends to end the special status given to 5,300 Nicaraguan immigrants that protects them from deportation. One protester from Nicaragua, currently protected by TPS, had this to say.
This is a country we're told it's about opportunities. It's a country, it's said, that's about diversity of cultures. And that's what the President Donald Trump and Congress ought to respect, the diversity, because altogether we form a rainbow, which is what makes this country beautiful.
Now here's a roundup of some of the other stories that are making the news around the world.
A historic bill has been passed in Australia's parliament legalizing same-sex marriage. The country has become the 26th nation to do so. The law will take effect from December 9th. Speaking in parliament, Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull declared it was a day for equality.
What a day for love, for equality, for respect. Australia has done it. Every Australian had their say and they said it's fair, get on with it. And the Parliament has got on with it, and we have voted today for equality, for love. It's time for more marriages, more commitment, more love, more respect.
An unofficial People's Assembly is expected to inaugurate Kenya's opposition leader Raila Odinga on December 12th. This after a contentious re-election in October. The country's Attorney General says the swearing in of an alternative president would be an act of high treason.
The criminal law of the Republic of Kenya in Article 40 of the Penal Code provides or stipulates that that sort of process is high treason. It is high treason in respect of the person so involved and any other person facilitating that process.
Over 400 Nigerian migrants have been flown back home from Libya, where they had been in various detention camps for months after attempting to enter Europe via Libya. They were all stuck in Libya, some for years now. They are back in Nigeria full of both gratitude and cautionary tales.
And they took us from one prison to another prison to another prison. They used us for business in Libya. They killed some people, they served some people, they beat some people. Even the deportation camp where I am, if we want to eat, they use skin to beat us out. Finish eating, they use skin to beat us in.
The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, has said the British government should apologize for a 1990 massacre of hundreds of unarmed Indian protesters. Khan, who is currently on a visit to India and Pakistan, is the first high-ranking British official to call for an apology. The dry weather and strong winds in Southern California, with gusts predicted to reach the strength of a Category 1 hurricane in mountainous areas, threaten to intensify the already devastating wildfires that have driven over 100,000 people from their homes. Officials have shut down schools and closed major thoroughfares. Almost 9,000 homes are without power.
And we've come to the end of this evening news brief. This and many other news, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.